Hello, my name is Curran Carter, author and overall lover of literature. Today, I want to talk about one of my novels, and specifically not the story itself, but the book cover of that novel. So, the cover I'm talking about is for my second novel, Beauty Scars. I actually self published my first two novels before I got published. Beauty Scars was the second and last of my self published novels. It came out in 2017, and it was really the first time I stretched my imagination. It's a fantastical love story with two teenagers or two young people. And it was, again, my first self published novel was really close to my life. It was tied to what was happening in my life or what I went through in my life. But this novel was it was just imagination. So I was actually really proud of it. And I was thinking about ways to market the novel. So what I did was I set up a book cover contest between two art high schools, and this was before my book was I wasn't even finished writing my book yet. So I was thinking way ahead of ways to engage readers. So I set up a book cover contest between two art high schools, and we ran the first round on Tumblr, and from Tumblr, then I think we dwindled it down to the top 5 or 10, and then we dwindled it down further, and then I actually brought the two high schools together, like in person. We did the finals at this place in Toronto called Artscape, and we had this whole day's event, and it was wonderful. Like two buses came down from both schools. There was a bunch of kids, and not just the artists came; all their friends came to support them. So it was actually a really beautiful day. And mind you, these kids were in grade 10 or 11, so they're 16 years old, grade 11, so they're 16 years old, like really talented. And so we ran this contest, and the winner ended up being this beautiful image that the first time I saw the image, honestly, I wanted it to win. I'm not gonna lie. I was hoping that when we ran the Tumblr competition, that people really reacted to it, because I thought it spoke directly to the story that I was telling. And I only gave the kids the first line of the novel. That's it. I gave them the title of the novel, and I gave them the first line. And they were able to create some splendid pieces that really just, I love the piece that ended up winning, but there were several pieces that were just mind blowing. So anyway, I ended up choosing the image that I loved the most, which became my book cover. And I think I published my book maybe a year after that. And when I published my book, I started sending it out, obviously, to my network first, and then started getting wider and wider. When I started getting responses from my network in particular, people are like, "Yo, Curran, I love how you did this story. I love the imagination. I love the fantastical elements of it." So I was happy. I was getting the type of responses that I wanted. But then I started getting some interesting responses. One person messaged me, this was over Facebook, I believe, and they messaged me and they said, "Hey, I really, love the story." They started off really polite and giving me some compliments. But then they said, "But I'm curious, why did you choose to put a white girl on your cover?" And then I was confused, because I was like, "Wait, there's a white girl on my cover? Is that true?" Because I'm being honest when I say this, I never looked at it like that. And when you look at the book cover, um, maybe you can tell me, but I really never processed it in that way. Partly because I think of the way it came together. Like I said, it was an art contest, so I was looking at it more as art than as any kind of racial situation. But it really, when that person said that to me, it was the first time I really had to relook at my book cover and analyze it and say, is this like a white girl? Is this why? And then, okay, I had that moment, and then I said, okay, so what? Like that was my next kind of thought. It was like, all right, so even if it is, so what? Anyways, one person's reaction, I'm not gonna take it out of context or blow it, like blow it out of proportion. But then another person asked me, and then two people asked me in the same week. So this is four people now that are asking me the same thing. So now I'm irritated. And some people were fairly close to me, because I remember I was getting WhatsApp messages about it. So those people had to be fairly close to me. And I remember responding kind of rudely, and because I was irritated at that point. So my response was not as kind as it probably should have been or could have been. But I was getting frustrated, because here I was really telling this beautiful love story, and what people were focusing on was the race of the girl on my book cover, which I thought had nothing to do with anything except just me being able to express what I felt um, directly reflected the story, like most accurately reflected the story that was inside. That's why I chose it. I thought it was a beautiful image. But there are a few reasons I think that people were reacting that way because I think I really analyzed this. Like I went deep into this reflection and I thought about it. And I think that at that time, it was 2017. I think politically at that time, racial tensions had just really exploded. You know, they're really high, especially here in North America. I'm in Canada, but we're right next to the US. So as you can imagine, you know what happened in 2017 and who was president and all of that stuff. So I think there was this real kind of protection of your race. Like if you're a black person, there was like a line, you know, and we're on this side, you're on that side. And it meant that no one could cross that line and come into our zone. You know, we were really protective of it, but it also meant that no one could leave that, cross the line from our side and leave that zone and leave that protection. And I think by me making, let's call it an ambiguous cover, right? By me not making a completely identifiable black cover, I think that rubbed some people the wrong way, I would say, and led to a lot of the criticism that I was getting. And my reaction to it stemmed from the fact that I I feel like people were saying, Kern, you're not black enough. You're not being black enough, you know? And that really bothered me because I just it's a message that, you know, I've heard before, you know, if I've heard people repeat before, it's a message that really I felt stifled my creativity because I don't I write fiction, and in my fiction I don't I'm not writing to process any kind of real life trauma. You know, I'm not writing to process any kind of tension I'm having with with racial problems. I'm not writing for that reason. I'm writing just because I have these stories in my heart that I want to tell, and this is how these stories come out. I actually don't even mention race in my books. I put in cultural kind of pointers that make you know who my characters are and where they're from. But I don't mention race in my books. It's not something that I really care to speak about. Again, I write fiction because I just want to be super creative, and these are the stories that are in my heart. It's not to deal with any kind of reality that I'm going through necessarily. That's not my reason for writing fiction. So when I felt that people made that assumption that, oh, because I'm not, you know, directly putting a black girl on my cover, that I'm not being black enough, I felt like that first insulted who I am as a person and what I do for my community. It made so many assumptions that you understood what I did for my community. And I actually don't like being told what to do. I think it's just as bad to say, like, you know how books are being banned today in droves, right? I feel like banning books is a horrible thing to do, you know, especially since you know who the ones that are being banned are. That's a horrible thing to do. But then also trying to box in a writer like myself into only writing or only expressing himself through the lens of their culture, their racial identity or their ethnic identity. I think that's equally as bad. Like I don't think that's any any less harmful than banning a book, stifling creativity like that, or having those type of expectations. So you're telling me that I can only write about this, or I can only express myself in this way, like that. No, that's not who I am. That's not what I want to do. So yeah, I reacted poorly to that because I don't think you should be telling me that. I don't think that there should be any limits on imagination, you know. So it was an interesting story, but I just want to tell it because I think that a lot of authors go through a lot of different phases, um, and we have to make a lot of different choices in our writing and in our art. And sometimes we do feel, especially writers that are racialized writers, we do feel some kind of responsibility to like our entire race. Like we feel that weight of it when we write. Like we really have to express ourselves in this way, And I don't succumb to that, to be completely honest. I feel like my stories are in my head, they're in my heart, and I write them down. And however they come out, they come out. And maybe sometimes it would be, um, they do reflect like some kind of racial thought or concept that I'm doing, but so far they haven't. And what's interesting is my newest book, my most recent novel, And Then There Was Us, as a very specifically black girl on the cover, because that to me fit the story like that. It matched the story perfectly. Like the feel of it matched, the energy matched, so it made sense for me to do it then. But I sometimes wonder if I did that as some kind of like, I don't know, retribution for my previous book cover, you know what I mean? Like I'm wondering if that was the case. But I don't think it is, but it's interesting that, you know, 2 books later I have a black girl on the cover. So I don't know. It's a wild thing. I want to know what your thoughts are. Let me know on what you feel about that responsibility you have as an author or as a writer or as a creator to your ethnic or racial community.